Well, it's time for that drop-off trip with my son, and I think this time he was more upset than ever. And I guess one of the things that really causes the greatest pain is to see him hurt. Parents, whatever you do for your kid's sake, you make sure it work it out. I know I put these on here, and if this irritates you, you don't have to watch it. But if I can help one person, and I can help one not to do this to their children and to themselves, then the heartache and the pain that myself and my son has had to go through will be worth it if we can keep any others from having to go through this. One of the things I notice, and I try to reassure him, is that I'm going to be okay. He keeps asking the question. Today, I know I counted 5 times. He said, "Daddy, I hope you know I love you." And I try to reassure him, "Son, I know that." And part of it is because we don't get to see each other, but about once a month or once every 6 weeks, because of the 500 miles distance where my wife had moved away. And people have said, you ought to move down there to where he's at. And I have prayed about that and thought about that. But the heartache that I'm feeling, I want to teach my son something. That you don't follow your feelings, and you follow God's will. I know what God's will is. I know where I'm at. I'm in God's will. I know where Paula should be, and back here. You don't follow her. She left, and I can't do that. And I've been criticized by friends and others, but I'm the only one that can know. And I want to teach my son that you follow God's will. You follow what it is He wants you to do. And one of the hardest things to do in life is when something feels so wrong, but yet you know it is so right. And it feels so wrong to be such a distance from my son, but I know it's so right. And it's a difficult thing. But the pain that he goes through, the insecurity that he feels, I find it very hard as a dad to see and watch. And yet there's nothing I can do. Now, I really do believe that one day he will be back with me for a long, long time. And, of course, in eternity, we'll never be separated again. And that's what I try to remind him of. He just turned 13. Most 13s don't want their daddy's touch. And almost all the way here, he rubbed my arm and laid his head on my shoulder. And to see him hurt that way is probably the greatest hurt that I feel. I mean, he wailed when we had to depart. It wasn't just a cry, it was whimpering. And it doesn't seem to get easier. It seems to get harder and harder. And if you're watching this, I ask that you pray for my son. And pray for me. I'm doing okay. God has given me peace. And God has led me. And then you've got everybody else. It's been almost 3 years now. Everybody wants to fix you up with somebody. And, you know, I'm not worried about that. right now, I want to be who I am. And one of the problems, if you do get a divorce, that you're going to find is you start trying to find somebody to replace that spouse if you love that spouse very much, as I did Paula. But you can't do that, because then you use someone else to take someone else's place, and that never works. And so I've decided in my own self that I don't want to find somebody for what they can give to me. I want to find somebody for what I can give to them. And one day God will do that. Now, my hopes is still that God will bring restoration. I don't know if that's going to happen. She's involved in a relationship with someone else at this point, and I'm not. I'm not really even looking. People have called. I had someone call this week wanting to set me up with somebody. And right now I'm just trusting God. It seems like an impossible situation. But you know, the children of Israel faced an impossible situation, and yet there was 2 men who said, we can take this land, and 10 says we can. And I've come to find out that in most of my situations of life right now, that there's usually 10 who say, give up, go ahead, you deserve to be happy, all this kind of stuff. And then there's usually 2 that'll say, you trust God, you believe Him. You know, Romans 8:28 is still there. We know that God, all things work together for good to them that love God, to them called according to His purpose. I know I love Him. I know He has a purpose. And even in all this, I know there's a purpose. I don't understand it. But the thing is, I don't have to. Because He said in His book, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not to thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct thy path. I don't have to worry about what's going to happen tomorrow, because I know who is going to direct me tomorrow. But my son, he's only a child, and I know he hurts. Please, parents, whatever it takes, you stay married. You work it out. Because if you do divorce and you decide to get somebody else, you got to work that out too. So you might as well work it out. I would never dreamed after 20 years that she would have walked away. But she did. The rejection hurts. But you know what? The acceptance of my Savior sure does make up the difference. I hope this will help you. I hope it does.